one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And this is exciting. We have some new members. We like to welcome new faces. And we like to look at the old faces and the former members who are currently here.
Sarah Menard.
Present.
Dina Kreitler. Jan Braun.
Here.
Donna Rosh. Here. Kelly Follert.
Here.
Kim Gordon.
Here.
Laura Oliver.
Here.
Jack Cutting.
Here.
Tom Hooper. Gary Smith.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, very good. And welcome to the new members. Kim Gordon, welcome to you. Gary, welcome to you. The rest of us, we're glad to be back. And Megan has done a good job of making sure that everybody has an agenda.
Oh, I just wanted to point out that Dina Kreitler called and said that she has her multi-state Chamber of Commerce director. So she got in touch with you too, Megan. Okay.
And here comes Tom Hooper. Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome, welcome. So the agenda looks kind of regular. I would entertain a motion if somebody wanted to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. And Megan also got into your hands electronically, and I think tonight also, minutes from the last meeting, and at some point we agreed to meet quarterly, so the last meeting was in January. And if there is no discussion or additions or corrections, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And do we have any citizens to be heard? Martin, would you like to be heard? No, okay. Mayor, would you like to be a citizen tonight?
No, not right. No.
Okay, all right. Sandra,
Okay.
you probably have lots to share.
Well, I do. It's been a very exciting couple of months. You just thought you were done, right?
That's okay. Are we walking around or just pass it out?
So, let me take one of these and let me pass the other one. Oh, that's right.
Back on the table. Copy that. Already have one. Thank you.
So first of all, before we get into the statistics, at the last meeting, we discussed updating our print materials in 2018, and one of the items that you have at your seats is the result of the new rack card. This has been updated with the photo that we had done during a photo shoot last fall by a photographer named Gary Adams, who came here, and thank goodness for Jack and Mickey, because they allowed us to drag them all over town and did probably 100 or more photos. And it was a hot day, and you can't even tell that looking at them. They look so cool, calm, and collected there.
Yeah.
But at the time, remember, we needed new photos, and we were also looking in particular for a photo for a cover of the Where magazine in St. Louis, so that came out last fall. And as a result of that, we've got these wonderful photos that we've been using in lots of other scenarios, including this, and I am able to submit those now when we have story ideas to media. And on that topic, some of the, oh, and by the way, I should point out that the bulk of these, we ordered 15,000 that were paid for by the Tourism Tax Commission. So these can go out through the the CTM contract, where they distribute these all over the state in welcome centers and in corporate offices, and that's done for us. And hotels all up and down Interstate 55. If you go out there and you're pulling out places to see and do, these are all located there thanks to the Tourism Tax Commission. Now, since the printing is so inexpensive when you get into those quantities, I added on 6,000 of these through my tourism budget, and you know, it's like pennies on the dollar when you order them in those quantities, and so we're able to use these through regular tourism too. So they're getting very wide distribution, and actually this is a lot easier to have like in shops and that kind of thing. Doesn't take up as much room, and you know, it directs people to the website. So that's what that is. So speaking of media, one of the other things that we started doing was taking larger ads, and I emailed those to the current members about a month ago, and I'll have to pick up the 2 new members. But Webster Kirkwood Times and West News Magazine were 2 of the first ones that we did. And since then, of course, with the announcement about the National Park Service that all of you received email content about, for one, our phone has been ringing off the hook. People who are National Park Service, I would say Uber enthusiasts, like, I wanted to say junkies, but that's not really the right word, but
Yeah.
these people are like,
They're enthusiasts.
they
Power
are super
users.
enthusiasts, yes. So we've had people come into the Welcome Center who have been to, well, one gentleman has been to every national park site and has written a book about it. And he's from Chicago, and his wife is from St. Louis, and he was coming down on family business, and he made it his business to come to St. Genevieve and get a sneak preview, because he wants to be in on the very first coverage of St. Genevieve when we become a National Historic Site. And there are many others like that. So a lot of background on National Park Service activities. But we will receive in this week's edition of West News Magazine, I met with a reporter, a writer, a travel writer specialist at the Travel South conference that I went to in Biloxi, Mississippi in, I think it was February. No, I think it was March. Had some back-to-back travel, and it got rather confusing. But I met a travel writer there, and she does guest writing for West News Magazine. So they're going to have a feature story that we didn't have to pay for in their February issue. In addition to that, in the Webster Kirkwood Times, where the TC and tourism are partnering to do another full-page spread, they are going to run, in addition to that, a news article editorially about the national park site. So lots of great coverage, and I think it will really boost awareness about St. Genevieve and all of its assets even before we officially become a national park historic site. So I wanted to update you with that, and I wanted to tell you that the other flyer, or the several things that are stapled in front of you, these are some statistics. At the last meeting, I gave you statistics about the total visitation. This is in particular how we track data at our sign-in log. We have a guest book there at the Welcome Center, and we try to catch as many people who are willing to. And as Megan will remember, it's usually about 30% of the total people will stop and sign a guest log. But it gives us a really good source of data. Where are they from? You know, what did they see that brought them here? And about half of the people that sign the guest log tell you how they heard about you. So to take it from the top, your first color chart there is a bar graph, and you can see that in 2017, this is January through December, obviously Missouri is the predominant state, but you can see the other top 6 states. So then we break that down at the bottom, not including Missouri, because you can already see that it's the most dominant. Next is Illinois, Kansas, Texas, Tennessee is the purple, California, which would surprise you, and then foreign countries. Now, of course, the foreign countries are lumped together, but it's important to know that we are a significant destination for a mixture of foreign countries. We get a lot of people from, obviously, France and Canada, but also Japan, China, Mexico. So we track those, and there's lots and lots of data about it. Kind of looks like this. So we put it into this nice little pie chart so that it's easier to digest. Then at the top of the next page, you can see Missouri broken down. And so we take those responses that tell us where they're coming from. And of course, as you might expect, St. Louis is the major metropolitan area. And then we also have a separate breakout for Springfield, Kansas City, and Cape Jackson. We also do Columbia, but that didn't score enough to make the top 6. So then we have less than 50 miles and more than 50 miles. So you can see there, and this is a direct result, I would say, of our integrated marketing campaign. We, certain things, especially in our social media, we try to really hit the less than 50 miles. And a lot of our paid media, we try to hit, obviously, St. Louis metro area. Many of these publications that we're discussing there are the St. Louis metro area. And then Kansas City, Springfield, and so
It's interesting, you might think that Cape Girardeau, Jackson area would be a larger hunk than it is, but, you know, there's no way to know, except that a lot of people in Cape think of themselves as southern, and they're more likely to go south if they're doing anything.
right?
I mean, if they're going to look for a city, they go to Memphis, and they go to small
Little Rock.
towns south of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, then the next page is the first 3 months of this year. So you have a 1-year summary and the first quarter. I thought since this is a quarterly meeting, that would be a good thing to hit on. So,
These are from the welcome book. I mean, the book.
yes, the
sign.
guest
Right.
sign-in sheet. So, the largest is Illinois. Wyoming, I think that's because we had a tour group and they were all from Wyoming, so we seem to have a large Wyoming contingent there. Tennessee, now going back to your earlier point about Memphis, we get a lot of people who are, coming Interstate 55 north. They get off the highway looking for something to do. And it doesn't hurt that we're an hour outside of St. Louis because they'll get off the highway now and then they can really focus on wherever they're going in St. Louis. And then, so you have Missouri broken down then again. St. Louis is the largest, followed by outside 50 miles away from us in general. And then the last page in this report shows of those that answered, and so those are about 30% of the total. Of those that answered, how many of them told us how they heard about us? And the top 6 responses there, because I should point out that the largest response is always friends and family, or a friend told me about it, or whatever it is. Friends and family is always the number 1. So we don't include that in this data because what we're looking for is more the hard facts about the website. Repeat visitor, that's important too because we have staying power. People want to come back after they've been here. Sometimes it's after their first visit. Some of them are regulars. Quite a few of them will say, I've been meaning to come back for 10 years or 20 years. And I always tell them, you've got to come back more frequently.
Yeah,
We'll miss you next
don't wait so
time.
long.
Yeah.
We missed you.
Yes. So, so again, there you have January through March at the top, and then the whole year of 2017 at the bottom. And you notice that the note there about 2017 under tours. See, we have it. So the first quarter, you would expect you don't have many tours. But the tour data that we presented here does not include 308 that came for the eclipse and reported that they were here for a tour. Magazines in the box at the bottom includes AAA, which is frequently people will call out AAA magazine or the guidebook. So we just include that in magazines. And it doesn't include 371 people who responded other, because we can't do much about the other. And
yeah.
in the course of a year, we thought it was more interesting to tell you. And Facebook then bumped up as the next highest response. So, yes.
So this first panel or graph on the top 7 markets in the, other than Illinois, Missouri, and Florida, the 4 remaining states, in which of those have we advertised?
So
I know we used to run ads in Memphis or something.
So we do AAA, which would hit
AAA
Illinois, and then we also do this the spring and fall vacation insert, which goes to about 500,000 newspapers from St. Louis included, but Chicago. It also hits Kansas City, Texas. It does not, and Tennessee, but it does not hit California. Does that answer your question? Yeah. We do advertise. Of course, we used to have a larger co-op grant. Co-op grants have been cut across the board, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we used to have a lot more money for out-of-state advertising. And so now we really focus on the ones that generate leads for us. And so those are the state of Missouri's Division of Tourism. We include St. Genevieve with their spring and fall insert. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. Yes?
Page 3, the Illinois attendance. Do we have a gut feel on how much of that is Southern Illinois and how much of it is the international city known as Chicago?
Right. So in this data, we don't, but if we broke down where they told us where they're from, sometimes they'll give a city.
What's your gut, though? Are they just coming from across the river, or are we seeing Chicago traffic?
We get some Chicago traffic. What the percentage is, I can't say for sure, but several times a week we have someone who says, I'm from Chicago or the Chicago area, or
Okay, that's interesting.
you know, points west of Chicago that they, you know, many of those communities consider themselves Chicagoland.
Okay.
And you know, when that's the case, they're probably on their way somewhere else, at some point south. We get a lot of snowbirds, especially this time of year, returning from warm places back to Minnesota or Wisconsin or Chicago. So, I also wanted to point out, because it'll be something that we'll talk about a little bit later when we talk about the committee activities, but since this group met last, there was a follow-up meeting with the Corps of Engineers the first week of March. You were there, Martin was there, Mayor Hassler, you were there. Anyone else around the table that attended that meeting? Okay. And the subject of that meeting was the Phase 4 of the levy, the recreational aspects of the levy. As you will recall, we had an ad hoc group that had been meeting to put together some ideas to feed into the Corps of Engineers, because they were putting together their draft of the recreational aspects of the final phase of the levy. And so that group turned its information into the Corps a little over a year ago. And in March, they said that they wanted to come back and kind of talk about that. And perhaps some other members who were there would like to talk about it, but I think that from the comments that I received back, we're going to pick up where we left off with the meetings about what we would like to do in that area. The Corps probably will come eventually and help with some expenses like parking lots and improvements, but some of the things that the committee recommended, like walking trails and wildlife viewing and that kind of thing, the Corps doesn't have a problem with that, but that's not in their plan, because some of it is actually outside the levy. So the mayor and I met with one of the main people on that group, and we'll probably be picking up those discussions again, so that tourism development group will probably be called in
Right.
to help with
Right.
that.
And probably the word there is eventually, the Corps
Mhm.
will eventually. You know, it's hard to know what their timetable looks like,
Right, right,
sometime in the future.
yeah. Was that sort of the impression that you had as well?
Exactly the impression I had.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite as optimistic, but yes. I mean, I don't think we're not gonna hear from them again. They're gonna produce their plan. We're gonna get to see a draft of it before it's released sometime. They miss like more deadlines than I can count. And then, you know, we can do whatever we want to do, and they're going to wait for funding someday.
Yeah, way into the future, yeah, eventually, maybe, yeah.
So, and then finally, I was going to point out that our tour groups for both students and adult tours have already begun. This is a little early, but we have a lot of groups coming in the last part of April, May, and June, and I'm actually in the process of drafting an email to our downtown merchants to make sure they're aware of what days these groups are going to be in, especially the adult groups, but also the children's groups. And we also, as of April 1st, started selling the passport tickets again. So these are the discounted admission to several of the tour sites. So instead of paying individually at the door, they can pay $15. And with that, they can see 5 sites, depending on the day of the week it is. And in the summer, on Saturdays, they can also go to the Beckett Rabeau because they honor the passport ticket. So the Bolduc does not participate in the passport ticket, but they have a separate admission there. So we started selling those again on April 1st, and they go through October.
Question.
Yeah.
Are there any new terms on the passports, such as expiration dates?
Yes, they're each valid for 1 year. So if they came this week on a Tuesday and they could see 3 locations, they came back later in the summer, they could pick up the Green Tree and the Amarillo. Because right now they're only open on the weekend. Did that answer your question?
That's new?
No.
No.
It's been the last 2 years that they have been, so when we sell them, we tell them, now, if you can't see them all today or this visit, it's good through the end of the year. And it says on it
A
2018.
calendar year then?
Calendar year.
Okay.
So it says 2018 on it. And it's been updated because the Green Tree is now open, and although the interpretation might not be fully fledged out, it's open and people are touring it, and it's one of the most beautiful, and as you know, buildings, and so people are very excited about that.
It's just spectacular to see it, if you just get to go inside and see
Yeah.
it,
Yeah, that's all they want right now.
yeah,
Yeah, you just really feel like you took a step back in history.
yeah.
So, that's my report. I also handed out, we have never mind, we have a National Park Historic
Yeah.
Society.
Yeah, well, all righty, thank you, that's a lot of work you've been doing.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. All righty, under old business, we have National Park Historic Site. Do we have any updates on that?
Well,
We know that it might be a test of our patience, we have to just wait.
yes.
Yeah,
So
well,
I was-
nothing's gonna happen today, tomorrow.
Right. I was telling the mayor the other day, well, first of all, I gave everyone a copy of this plan.
I didn't get
Oh, you didn't get one? Would you mind?
I'll give him mine, I know it.
Yeah, Don's probably got one too.
Thank you.
So on that graphic, the dotted area indicates the St. Genevieve National Historic Landmark District, and that starts on the very end of Market Street and goes all the way to the river, as you can see by the dots. That's about 4,600 acres. And you see on the inset, the area that we all know down on St. Mary's Road with the Amarillo as kind of the heart of it. That area and what we call the Delasue Kern House, which is where Highway 61 and St. Mary's Road meet south of St. Genevieve down by the recycling center. Just south on 61 on the right-hand side, on the west side of the highway, is the Della Sue Kern Historic Site. And that is currently owned by the State Department of Natural Resources State Park System. It is not interpreted, but at least it has been preserved. And so that was recommended in the Department of the Interior's report as becoming part of the National Historic Site System. So you can see the two dark shaded areas there. That is the area along St. Mary's Road and the Della Sue Kern site. And those two areas added together are about 12.5 acres. So in a National Historic Landmark District of 4,600 acres, now a lot of that is actually the agricultural area, the big field. About 12.5 acres is the intention of the core of the site. So I think it's important for people to be mindful of that and aware of that. And I was telling the mayor the other day that in addition to these people who are coming in who are really experts in the park, even as consumers, of course we've been having discussions with the regional NPS officials, and one of the gentlemen who came in to visit said that there was a National Historic Site in his area. This was in, I think, Wisconsin. And it took several years for it to get off the ground because they hadn't done the legwork in terms of the study, the recommendations, looking at willing transfer of land and sites like the state park system is engaged in. And that took several years. And then another one came in and he said that at the, I think it's called the Pullman National Historic Park site near Chicago, they had a welcome center there and they got approved for a National Historic Park site, and they were able to set up within 6 months because they co-located their information booth inside their existing welcome center. So, I mean, that's an interesting, an interesting path to getting a presence earlier than it might otherwise happen. But, so, one other thing, and this will again come up under the tourism development area, but Mayor Hassler and myself have each met with Bob Mueller, and I know he told you about this the other day too. So he's made a suggestion that that we form a non-for-profit that would be considered like a Friends of the Park organization, so that people who are excited and want to help or want to become engaged or volunteer down the road, that we'll have a vehicle for that, and also that we can kind of harness and tap into that energy. And so I think that's something that that we'll be looking at. And
So do you imagine there's a group of people who are not currently involved who would like to be involved in that?
well, I think there might be just some some residents who are national, and this could be anywhere in the county. They don't have to be St. Louis City residents, but there could be someone who's really a national park enthusiast and they want to get involved and help in some way. I don't know, but I think I mean, are the committee's thoughts about this? Does it seem like something that would make sense? Kim, I know you have direct experience with this.
So my experience at Friends of Pond Association is I think it's always to the benefit of the community and the park to have a Friends Association, and the sooner we can institute that, the better. I know you need one too. I'll talk to you.
I do have a little friends group.
Oh, did you? Didn't realize it. So, yeah, if I can assist in any way, we've got a constitution that I think is pretty rock solid. It wouldn't take much to turn it up and stand one up. Friends has a national footprint, but it's not very large. It's basically a Midwest footprint. But there's people out there willing to help.
So,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
and I don't know, speaking of the national park, Charlie Brennan on KMOX had a conversation with Guillaume Lacroix, who is the Consul General of France in Chicago, and he was in St. Louis and on Charlie Brennan's show, and he was excited about it. You know, and it's as though association with the federal government gave us standing in France. It makes them recognize that if the federal government is going to recognize St. Genevieve, then they will too.
I've got a question about the map, and this is because I simply don't know, but the dotted line area, the National Historic Landmark, when was that established?
1960.
Okay. And I don't know the definition of what that means, so if you could push to me someplace that I can read.
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah, we have reams of information on the St. Genevieve National Historic Landmark District. Some of it more consumable than others, but
Okay.
yeah, so St. Genevieve was actually one of the earliest communities to be granted a National Historic Landmark District as a result of the Historic American Building Survey. So you hear the term HABs. All of these historic sites have been inspected for relevance, and are they contributing, are they standalone in their own right to that national relevance. But really anything inside that area is considered significant, so.
I'd like to have a side conversation with you on how that may or may not apply to the marina, since it seems to be within its boundaries.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay, you should all have, yes, everybody has a copy of this?
Yes. Is anyone else missing one of these committee lists? Looks like this.
Just at the,
Because you're handing them out.
at the last meeting, we had talked about the need for some committees, and there are committees in existence. And these are current Tourism Advisory Council members on these committees, and we certainly have some new people we can add to the committees. Oh, did we? They're all here?
That's what I did this afternoon.
Oh, yes, you did. Okay, good. And we combined a couple. So electronic media and print media are pretty cut and dried. We know what that means. For tourism development, and we have Laura, Kim, and Sandra, that's going to roll a lot of things into that, including the discussions about signage and the recreational phase of the levee and the beautification of the ferry landing, and if and when we could ever do anything to the marina, that would be terrific. So, and just because these people are on the committee, it doesn't mean that nobody else gets to have ideas. So if anybody else wants to participate in any of those discussions. Transportation, and this has changed quite a bit in the past couple of years, and I think with the trolley, and then if phase 4 of the recreational part of the levee gets going, that would be walking and bike trails. And what's going to need to happen is discussions to know how to connect the national park site with the rest of the town. What kind of connecting corridor can we have? And that will also include signage or walking paths or rerouting traffic or whatever it takes. It's not gonna happen tomorrow, but we need some of that kind of discussion. And this is a new committee, and it's about hospitality training for people who work in the hospitality industry, or actually anybody in any of the shops. And I mean, I hammer on my employees all the time, and I was, during the Scottish Festival, somebody came in and I had just said, here's the schedule if anyone comes in, and I was in the back room, and I heard, yeah, I don't know anything about that. Well, I knew what the question was, so I went back up and said, okay, tell me again, you don't know anything. Oh, no, I forgot. Yeah, well, here's the schedule. So it just takes reminders. So that's a new committee, so if you like your committee assignment, that's where you are. You're also welcome to participate in any of the discussions about any other things, but it might give this entire committee a little focus and a little direction.
The other thing that I would point out, and this kind of ties into the Downtown St. Genevieve, formerly known as St. Genevieve Downtown Renewal Program, is that originally the idea for downtown pointer signage was as a result of a tourism brainstorming session that we had, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and the downtown group took that on, to pursue grant funding and matching funding for that. And that is this close to actually coming to fruition. So under signage,
I was going to ask, where are those wayfaring signs?
Yes.
Yeah.
well, so the answer is that they are with the company that puts the lettering onto the sign. So, and then puts the,
Powder coating.
thank you, powder coating over the top of it. So,
If it's the last thing I do, even if I have to take pieces of cardboard and write everybody's name on it and post it myself, we're gonna have those up pretty soon.
so then, the other thing, on the category below that about being bike friendly, so, downtown renewal or downtown St. Genevieve, received a donation to, purchase, bike racks, bike locking mechanisms of some sort. And so their design committee came up with an idea for it. It's been tentatively approved. They have to figure out how many of these they can buy with the amount of donation that they have. And I know they'll be coming forward, not to us necessarily, but that was like another activity that, with our partnership with Downtown Renewal and, across other organizations, we're able to sometimes make things, spread out the work a little bit.
And there is a bike rack currently at the Main Street Park.
Yes.
Yeah, there is one down there. And I got to thinking, we probably need a sign directing people to the dog park. Tourists need to know that. A lot of people travel with their dogs. Yeah.
Or at least on the map,
Right,
the chair map.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Little paw print logo. Or a fire hydrant, one or the other.
But then they might expect one in there.
There is one in there.
There is
There's
one.
I mean, it's not a working one, it's a prop for the dogs.
Depends on who you ask.
Good point.
Okay, any discussion about the committee, subcommittees? No? Okay. So, under new business, I think we've heard some updates about spring ads.
Yes, I.
Do you have, that's okay, that's all right. And same way with your grants, we know, you have not as much money as you would like.
Well, that's always true.
Yeah.
On this, I will touch on the fact that previous committee members will remember this, but every year, this time of year, we're able to apply for a marketing matching grant through the State of Missouri Division of Tourism. And those are not as big as they used to be. And last year, after they approved our grant for, let's say, 4 things, to cover the expense for 4 things, they pulled it back after the budget went through that cut the Division of Tourism, and Division of Tourism passed that right on to all of us grantees. So instead of being able to advertise in the fall 2017 and the spring 2018 visitor's guide for the state of Missouri that I was telling you is the one that goes out to all these hundreds of thousands of newspapers, and we actually get leads from it, we had to cut the spring distribution from our budget. So the Tourism Tax Commission was able to help us by picking that up and paying for that out of their budget. Now, I'm going to ask for this to be included in our grant again next year. We really hope that it'll happen. but I won't know about that until July. So if something happens or if we have to cut it, we'll go ahead with the fall and cut the spring and then maybe have to revisit that again like we did this year. But just so you know, when you hear about cuts, you know, for the local level especially, these things make a huge difference for a small community like ours. And then the second item there, ML/PBS, well, that stands for Missouri Life / PBS stations across the state. So as you know, we have advertised in Missouri Life magazine, and they're actually working with us on 2 new projects. One of them is Missouri Life does these little vignettes about communities across the state. They're usually about 30 minutes long, and they will air on the Kansas City PBS station, the Columbia PBS station, I think Springfield, and the St. Louis PBS station. And they're not inexpensive to do this, but I applied for an economic development grant for that and got approved for it, so we will be doing that this summer. So the way they do it is Missouri Life has their like magazine team for like all the visuals, and the PBS station sends their video crew. And if you've ever participated in any of those chamber videos, it's a lot like that. It's, you know, it'll be very scripted and representing all the different aspects of tourism in St. Genevieve, now to include a future National Historic Park site. So that'll be a project. I also have been talking with them about, is anyone familiar with the Bike Across Missouri program? It's called Big BAM. So the last few years, this is kind of a, maybe in the last 5 years they've done this. So they go across the northern part of the state from, basically from the Mississippi River to out west somewhere, Independence. And they camp and have a live music, and then bike to the next location. They camp and have live music and bike. So it's a real like a roving festival feel. These are not bike racers like the race across Missouri that we had a few years back with the chamber. These are casual bike enthusiasts who like to camp and listen to music and have a good time. And so they've done this across the northern part of Missouri. And this year, for the first time, they're doing the Route 66 area. And next year, we're trying to get them to do the Southeast Missouri and maybe even start it here in St. Genevieve, which would really be a prize, because the first day, you know, the first night, they've got all afternoon, they're not exhausted, they can look through, you know, they can look through your, your downtown, and they bring, you know, their support, significant others and support crews with them. So Missouri Life is...
Somebody has to haul the camper.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they all, my understanding is that they do tents, and then the next morning they break camp and they put it all in a bundle, and they, you know, so there's like a lead team then that picks up all the camping stuff and they take it out to the next location, so it's waiting for them, like an advance team. So that would certainly give us exposure to a whole new demographic. I mean, these would be primarily millennials, but also some, you know, Gen X and Gen Y. So.
And then they'd want to come back and ride the bike trails around St. Genevieve.
Well, we hope so.
In their leisure time. Yeah.
We hope so.
Yeah.
So when you hear about that, please be supportive of it, because we would like more coverage.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So are they gonna stay in St. Genevieve?
Yes, so the idea would be that the first night they would launch from here. So if we get this approved, they would be coming in on Sunday and having like a music festival Sunday night, and then spending the night, and their first bike ride would be Monday morning. And they would go from here south probably to...
We would like accommodate them at the park or something.
I'm sorry?
We would accommodate them at the park?
It depends on how many, how much space they need, but they're going to send a team out to take a look at it. Possibly the Jerdefet campgrounds where the Scottish Days Festival was, or if it is a larger requirement than that, possibly the park. This is all very, very early.
I think they want access to open restrooms?
They do porta potties, so.
Okay, thank you. Donna, you have anything about Felix's birthday?
Kind of got rained out, but it was still good. I felt very blessed because I had a lot of people come forward and give donations and grants, so the whole thing was paid for that way. And for me, that just shows how the community is.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times people think nobody's stepping up for each other, but I think they showed me that we are. I think everybody that came had a good time. I know a lot of people from Farmington, because I'd say, where are you from? So there were a lot from that direction that came over. And Jim was correct. Shaw House will be 200 years old next year, so we'll probably do it again, but probably when it's going to be warmer and maybe not rain.
Yeah, and since this is the bicentennial year, is there anything else planned for the year?
No,
Anything special for?
nope. That was my one chance, and that's what I did.
Felix only gets one day for his birthday.
Well, his actual birthday's in February, so you know.
Those can go around.
Yeah, same day as Abraham Lincoln.
All right, well, thank you for that.
When did he?
As far as correspondence goes, we have two pieces. One of them is, actually this was, I guess it was an email that was sent to Mayor Hassler, and he forwarded it. And it just, you have a copy of it, I think, and it's just very complimentary. Somebody visited St. Genevieve, and they said they were from Seattle and had just moved to St. Louis area. And they said, here's part of it. St. Gen did not disappoint. They were here in, I don't know, it was cold. Though a few shops are open for business on Saturday, we thoroughly enjoyed the quaint historic look and feel of the town. It was delightful to see the preserved homes and buildings and get a sense of what it was like in the 1700s. The museum and the Welcome Center offered much info. Employees were nice. Thank you for preserving and taking an opportunity to share this incredible history. For all of us, we hope to see you again. So we like that kind of feedback. And the other one is an email that I sent to everybody in February, and you have now a copy of it in front of you. And the parts in blue are sort of responses. And this was an anonymous letter that I got after our January meeting. So I think it was a county resident. But I welcomed the letter, and it had some suggestions for tourism. I think all of them are delightful. Some of them, I don't know how we could ever pull it off, except that I'm glad to know that people are watching and people are interested and that people are willing to tell us what they think. So anybody else has a letter, bring it on. But I thought some of these were really interesting ideas, especially the one about the pecan trees. I talk about the pecan trees all the time to French classes that come in, because that's kind of important to tell them why we have pecan trees in town, and that they were used as boundary markers between the arpents of land and the long fields. And so this person suggests that they are getting old and we should think about replacing them. Not taking down the old ones, but that always make sure that we have young and healthy pecan trees.
Don't have squirrels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Squirrel resistant ones?
Yeah. Please.
To designate bike routes along Highway 61 and St. Mary Road. I don't know, I've ridden a bike up Highway 61 and I don't think I ever want to do it again, but there are way too many trucks, I think. Except that, you know, other bikers, they would feel differently. And this person also suggested bike racks. So bike racks they're coming and we're working on that. And the Welcome Center, and that's the part in blue, is a kind of, the Welcome Center has compiled a map or description of the biking trails around St. Genevieve, and sometime in the future, when we get to going on phase 4 of the levee project, there may be more biking trails. Talking about the Lime Kiln Park, I think that is, actually that's private property, isn't it?
Very.
I mean, it's the Lime Kiln property, and I know that employees use it.
And retirees.
Yeah. Anyway, they suggested that put restrooms out there. I thought there were restrooms out there.
I think
maybe
she's,
making it
they're saying to
available.
possibly ask the Limekiln if they would ever consider making them available, their existing restrooms at Limekiln Park.
To add a dump station for our RVs and to develop an RV park along the South Gabourey. We've talked about that before down at the Moses Austin or the Jurafat property.
Sam, that was one of the things that you put into that grant application for the Delta Regional Planning. One of the items we talked about for that. Have you heard anything more back on that? Where you put the grant proposal in as the intent to put a grant proposal in?
To do an RV park?
Yeah,
No.
or to do some enhancement of that. I think that was one of the things we discussed.
No,
on
the
that.
Delta Regional Authority grant application was for the hospitality training program.
Okay,
Yeah,
because I know we had talked about a number of bullet points to try to deal with that.
yeah. So the one that scored the highest was the one with the hospitality.
Oh, good.
But doesn't mean that that it's not a good idea. And under that context, I think that it did get assigned to transportation. I guess RVs
Okay.
are transportation.
Yeah. Yeah, so, good ideas, we're thinking of, working on, sort of. To develop picnic areas along the South Gabourey, that is a pretty area down there, and actually, that, that Jurafat, down there where the militia
Mm-hmm.
camps, and, I mean, it's kind of already a picnic area. I don't guess there are any tables down there, but it's a nice spot.
I wondered if this person was also possibly referring to the flat space next to the Gabourey along South Gabourey, like across from the Kiel Schwind House. There's a lot.
Yeah,
Right,
I think
yeah.
down there where it flattens out
Yeah,
at the
that's
bottom.
what I was thinking, yeah.
Because it kind of has access by the trestle and then back up that way.
Well, and, that would probably tie in with, a transportation corridor to
Yeah,
get people from the national park side up to the downtown area.
it'd be great flat space for a
Uh-huh.
bike rack or something like that too, because it's
Yeah.
right off the traffic.
And the next two ideas I thought were really interesting. One of them is to tube the North Gabourey from the Limekiln Park to the 3rd Street Bridge. I don't know.
Whitewater races.
I think it'd probably look like human duck races if we we'd look like the Rotary.
Well, you can put one of those automatic cameras there and then sell
Yeah.
them black belt pictures.
Yeah, so it might have to happen after a big rain. I don't know.
That's the only time it happens, after a big rain.
Yeah, but I thought it was an interesting idea. And also, and this one I think is really an interesting idea and sort of doable, and it's kind of happening already, which was to create a bloom time by adding redbuds and dogwoods to the downtown. And, I think we would all say, don't ever plant a Bradford pear ever again.
Right.
And so different kinds of flowering trees. So there are currently some flowering trees on Main Street and there's some on 3rd Street. But it is an interesting idea, and I guess if we just put it in the minds of everybody who's going to plant a tree to be real cognizant of the kind of tree you're planting, and a blooming tree would be a nice addition. And there are a lot of flowers downtown that there used to not be. So anyway, I welcome the letter. I shared it, and I'm glad that people have ideas. I think we should hang on to all of them.
Is the idea of an RV park under serious review right now by any committee, or I'm looking for my committee?
Well, so it would be under transportation. Technically, it could fall under tourism development as well. But I have had direct conversations with the Jurafat committee members on this topic. We did use their campsite area last year during the eclipse, and it worked really well, considering it was the first time it had ever been done. I think we probably could tighten it up a little bit, but
So I guess they come down 32 to, they don't come in through town with the RVs, right, or do they?
So they just don't go under the railroad trestle?
Yeah, you can come through town without going under the railroad track.
Yeah, they would go
Okay.
straight down Market Street past the Welcome Center and turn to
Gotcha.
the right.
Okay.
But now that's a good point, signage to that effect, like
Yeah.
RV
RVs,
parking.
no right turn by
Yeah,
RVs.
or also get a height notification
Right.
for the trestle, because we had one of our vendors come in for the
Oh, for Scottish.
Scottish Days, and it was a good thing, because I was on the phone with her trying to guide her in. I said, oh, by the way, you're bringing several vehicles? Oh, yeah. I said, well, how tall are they? Oh, we got one that's 13 feet tall. I said, well, let's change your plans, bring you down to six, brought her down to St. Mary's Road
Right.
and in, and,
Yeah, there have been vehicles that topped out and
yeah.
have gotten stuck and, yeah.
The school bus take the,
Well, that's,
Yeah.
she's the one that had that school bus and the other kind of
a FedEx truck, I
big
think, did the same.
trucks, and it was,
Yeah.
Kim, were you going to make a comment to that regard?
No,
Okay.
I was just curious. But I agree with you. If we're going to, if we're going to encourage RVs to come down, we're going to have to point them in the right
yeah,
direction.
gotta create that.
I think Moses Austin, with some money, which we're gonna have to figure out where we're gonna get it from, but I'm sure they're open. You could set up 10 RV sites right now. They already got the electric, wouldn't be no problem to run the water. And then I talked to Steve, up the road, you could put in a dump station, It's very doable. It's just putting it all together and who's gonna, biggest question for the Georgia Fed is, we got enough on our hands, we don't wanna have to take care of an RV park.
Yeah, so Hawn is already booked through the season. So anybody that comes through town with an RV, they're not staying at Hawn. And if they're not staying at Hawn, where are they gonna go? I'd like to capture them and get them down here.
Yeah, so because the only other option, if they're not going to Hahn, is to go to the campground along I-55 near Perryville. And once they get that far,
They
they've
keep
got to
on going.
backtrack
They're
30
not gonna come
minutes.
back.
Yeah, they're too far away,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so it has a lot of merit, it certainly does.
Yeah, if we could get an estimate on what that would cost, then we could, if we have that money as a goal for something, then we could maybe develop a fundraising project towards that. And look towards grants and other fundraising.
Other than it's private property.
Well, the city's got some property there too. Mark and I talked,
So there's-
just on the other side of that,
Maybe ask
there's some
these.
city property that could be possibly developed.
It's flood buyout property, so there are deed restrictions, there are limits on what we can do.
Right.
Couldn't build a comfort station.
but,
Gotcha.
Excuse me, where is that?
It's in a field, kind of east of the Genevieve property. But now we've leased to a farmer who plants it.
Yeah.
And then there's some private property there too. There's a pretty good-sized parcel of private property along the creek right there. I can't remember the lady's name, but I looked at it. It had the property, they're paying taxes on it, but it's, so.
And, I agree, the initial cost is not substantial. Somebody being responsible for maintenance on an ongoing basis
Yeah.
is the issue.
And it'd have to be staffed in some way to collect fees. that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
somebody have to be.
Yeah.
So last year, the way that we did that for the eclipse, it was all online, and they signed up, and then they stopped by the Welcome Center. This part could be online too, because we didn't have any signage last year. The Jour de Fête committee didn't have signage, so we had to give them a map and say, you're number 10 and you're number 11, whatever.
How many stayed down there, do you remember?
Oh, I think that there were 12 on that side.
There was no charge for that.
No, there was a charge.
There was a charge?
You mean for them to camp there?
Yeah. Did Genevieve collected the fee?
Yes. Technically, it was all done online, and then they were paid for whatever was collected on their behalf. They being the Jour de Fête committee.
Currently, Hawn is $26 a night, if I remember correctly. But some state parks charge up to $35 a night. So you could make it worth our time during the summer season.
And just to have them that close that they can walk,
Right.
Right, yeah.
2 blocks and get to
Right.
the shopping and dining and.
Yeah.
And we only have so many, even with all of our B&Bs full, we don't have any hotel. Well, soon we will have 7 rooms at the Audubon's Hotel, but we need more places to let people stay over to increase our collective capacity.
Well, and to your point about the bicycling route, on the Katy, it's very common for people to go from one town to the next with their camping gear. And so even if we put up a tent area down there, I think we could have a revenue stream coming in from there as well. Thus encouraging bicyclists to come through town, and once we establish some routes for them to do something with it.
Discussion.
And I think probably that's, if we combine some of the efforts of transportation and tourism development, we can maybe attack some of these ideas. And
Next.
yeah, upcoming events.
Okay, so.
There's a lot going on every month.
There is. So in addition to the items that that we already talked about, the 200th anniversary with the Felix Ballet, we also, on April 28th and 29th, we have the École de Soldats, which is a history conference that stays down at the Jurgenstedt campgrounds. And they have lectures on Saturday morning that are held at the Welcome Center, and then in the afternoon they have demonstrations and an auction at the campsite, and then on Sunday they have additional activities at the campsite. They also come in on Friday, the day before, and they do a presentation for local school children, and so they come down and do hands-on history lessons down at the campsite, which they just love, and we alternate between St. John students and Valley students. So that's on April 28th and 29th. On that same weekend is going to be the opening of the Center for French Colonial Life, I almost said studies, Center for French Colonial Life, which is the, to us, it's the former Bank of St. John building on Market Street that's owned by Bolduc House Properties, now referred to as New France, the other colonial America. So they are having their opening weekend, the same weekend as the École de Soldats. And then on May 19th and 20th is one of our most cherished events, and that's the Master Gardener's Garden Walk. This is a beautiful time in St. Genevieve. It's an excellent opportunity to see some private gardens that you don't usually get to see. And this will, these spring events and even the summer events will be covered in some of this editorial coverage that we're getting in these St. Louis area magazines. So, and then we also have the French Heritage Festival coming up on June 9th, which I think will be before the next meeting of this group, so I want to point that out. And several art walks, and the Welcome Center is hosting the high school art competition, which we do every year, so that'll be next week, actually. Local talent, budding talent.
It's not in St. Genevieve proper, but on June 2nd is National Trails Day. So we will be having an event out at Hawn along with Felix Ballet for that's your annual public comment.
We decided to do it in a different place. But next, this Saturday, coming Saturday is, I know, it's Art Walk, but it's also the opening of the reception for the Matt Ziegler Gallery. We have been working on the side building and gotten it ready, so people are excited.
Good. Okay. Anybody have anything else to bring to the table? If there is no further business, the meeting will stand adjourned.
Second.